Absolutely fantastic to have you here today, and I got to tell you, I have one of the best putting devices that I've ever seen in front of me today. It's called the Roll Your Rock, and I was reaching out to the guys from Eyeline Golf. They usually send me over all their training aids for me to test. I saw this one on their website and I said, man, I've got to have this. This looks really cool, a really great way to train your speed control in putting, and you can do it right from your living room, which is super nice, really convenient if you want to get better at your house. That's one of the quickest ways to do it. And they said, hey, I'd love to send you one, but we've been sold out for a while on these. These things have just been flying off the shelves. Way more demand for these than we were expecting, and we'll send you one as soon as we got in. So I saw the reason why they were selling so quickly once I got mine in. This is the best way to train speed control indoors that I have found without having some kind of $10,000 piece of technology, and it's a lot more fun. I've noticed that even kids love to play this from the color coordination, and we'll go over that here in a second. So if you have kids, grandkids, anything like that, they'll love playing this, and it's a serious training aid. I use this for my own putting. If you're a tour player, you could use this for your putting. Now the idea with this mat, which is really cool, pretty daggone genius. I didn't come up with it myself. A guy named Adam Koloff, I'm guessing, did that, so shout out to Adam. Pretty daggone smart training aid here. But the idea with this mat is that I can start from different colored zones, so I'll be farther or closer to the ramp. And then wherever I hit on this ramp, so notice the color that it stops on when it rolls up the ramp, that was at the end of the green, that's going to roll back to the corresponding zone on the mat when it rolls out. So it's showing you very accurately how well you're controlling your speed control. And I can also putt, use these little circles. If my ball rolls just kind of over the edge of this circle, that would be kind of a lip in. If it rolls barely over the edge of this other circle, that would be a lip in on the other side. So basically, as long as any part of my ball is touching this number, that would have been a made putt. So you can not only control your speed, which is crucial, we'll get to here in a minute, but you can control your aim at the same time. So the general theory here is just I'm going to try to pick a specific number to roll it to. The ball's going to roll back, and then I'm going to get to putt again. The cool thing is if you have a playing partner or you have some people around the house, you can play against each other. It's really easy to make this a game because you can very easily keep score. So I like to play horse, where you just, you and a partner would play just like you'd play horse like you're shooting a basketball. You pick a zone to hit to. If you make it, it counts. They have to match you. If you miss it, then they get to pick the zone. So that's a really fun, easy game to play with this. And one of the reasons, probably more importantly here, that I think this is so great is it goes in with how your body learns to control speed. Now I've fallen into the trap, and we've all fallen into the trap, of trying to hit the same putt over and over. And I kind of grew up thinking that we're all like robots. And if I can just hit the same putt time and time and time again and make 1,000 of them or whatever, that I'm going to completely ingrain that, and I'm going to be able to transfer that over to the course. Now there's tons of research out there. I've really been studying motor learning a lot the last handful of years. And what they have found through tons of research studies is that doing the same thing over and over again is not the best way to learn. Actually, varying what you're trying to do is the best way to learn. So if I'm sitting here putting on this mat, the last thing I want to do is just putt to the same number every single time. I want to go ahead and set up to this putt, and I say, okay, let me try to pick number 3 there. Let's see if I can get it to roll to that one. And now what your brain is doing is you're saying, okay, I'm going to feel what I think number 3 is going to be like, and then I'm going to get immediate feedback. If I'm off, I can see that right away. So probably going to stay on the end of the gray. I barely got into 3. So that was a successful attempt. And then I would move to the next one. Now, when I putt this next putt, let's say I'm only going to go to number 1, I have to adjust my feel more accurately, or I'll be able to adjust my feel more accurately as I practice this, and I have to adapt. Now that's exactly how you play when you're on the golf course. On the golf course, you don't get to hit that 6-footer 15 times in a row until you make one. You have one putt, and then you have to adjust and hit another one and another one. So your ability to putt well is less about how many times in a row you can do something and how well you can adjust. That's what's called random practice. And that's why I highly recommend when you're putting with this mat, always be varying up the numbers that you're trying to hit. Another question I'll get all the time is, what's more important when we're putting, the speed control or the directional control? And I think the easiest trap, or the kind of the most common sense thing to fall into, is to say, well, I have to be able to hit this putt on line. If I can't put it in the right direction, I'm not going to be able to make the putt. And that's what I always thought growing up. And I kind of found that that's not quite the case. Here's the reason why. Even if I have a dead straight putt, I'm still going to have to hit it at the correct speed to make that. So if I hit it a little short, obviously it's not going to go in. If I blast it too far by, you can only hit the ball to where it would roll about 5 feet past the hole before it starts hitting the center of the cup and popping out and missing. So if I hit it with the wrong speed, I'm obviously going to miss. But kind of a more interesting point with this is, what about breaking putts? let's imagine here, I know I don't have this putt, but let's imagine that I'm aiming to a putt that's 6 or 8 feet away, and let's say it's got a foot of break in it. So I'm lining it up to the right and it's going to break in with a foot of break. Now I have to hit it the perfect speed to get it to break exactly that foot. If I was to hit it a little firmer or harder, then I could take a little less break. Maybe I'd only have to play it 3 or 4 inches outside of of the hole to get it to break back in. If I was going to hit a little slower, maybe I could play 2 feet of break. And the crazy thing is when you find very severe slopes, kind of more on the extreme side, but you can have as much of 6 feet of different aiming points. I could aim from a foot outside the hole all the way up to 7 foot outside the hole, and I'm talking about a 10-footer here, and make every single one of those depending on what speed I'm hitting. And what I found when I've tested players is they have usually a pretty decent idea of what direction they're hitting. It's not too bad because we get immediate feedback the direction we're hitting, and we pay attention to that much more than we do the speed. Where I find players that don't putt very well, where they're really off track, is they're not able to roll this ball with the correct speed. So they try to hit number 3, and all of a sudden they're well short of it, down by number 2 or number 1. But if you train on this mat, because you get immediate feedback, because it's easy to see what's going on, you're going to improve right away, which is really, really cool. You're going to make a lot more putts. Now, I can't reiterate this enough. One of the biggest things in testing when I've studied a lot of motor learning papers is the ability to transfer what you do in practice to what you do when you're out there on the course performing. And this is really cool. If you want to be the guy that's clutch, that makes those big putts, that always is the guy that wants to have the putter in your hand when there's money on the line or a tournament on the line or maybe just to beat your buddy, this is very important. You have to practice a specific way to make that happen. So when they tested this, let me give you an example again of the block practice or doing the same thing over and over again. If I was to set up on this number 2 on this board and try to putt to the number 2 on the ramp, eventually I would get very good at hitting that, and I would actually get pretty good at hitting that fairly quickly. The fastest way for me to get good at hitting this number 2 would be to do the same thing over and over again, and then I'd kind of hone that in. Now the problem is, when they do a retention test in these studies and they say, okay, let's wait a week or let's wait a day or a month and then come back out to the course and try to recreate that in a real putting scenario, this falls apart and there's no retention. So what feels really good when you're practicing doesn't hold up on the course. You kind of fall apart. You've seen a lot of guys do really well when they're putting, really well when they're on the driving range, and then when you get out to the course, it all just goes down the tank. So the way to do this properly, again, if you want that to retain and go to the course, we have to vary what we're doing here. And the interesting side note to this is that you're actually going to perform worse while you're practicing. You're going to feel like you're not getting better as fast as you could as if you did the same thing over and over again, but that's going to carry you over to the course and you're actually going to improve when you go out to the course and when it really matters. So now let's get to the part that matters. How do we actually work on this? We know that we want to practice and hit this ramp, and I'll tell you what, if you did nothing else other than grab a golf ball and start using this to train, you're going to improve really fast. But let me give you a couple of little tips here to help control your speed better. Number 1 is going to be how long, and what they found is how long my backstroke is. If my backstroke gets too long and then I'm decelerating into the putt, it's going to get very inconsistent. I've done a lot of training with Sam Putt Lab that has studied over 150 professional golfers, and what they found is there's kind of a range on how long and how short you should go back to be consistent with your speed control. So if I'm trying to hit the number 3 there, let's say, and I make a really long backswing, I'm going to have a tough time hitting the 3 because I'm almost having to slow down. If I was to accelerate through that putt with that big, long, flowing backswing, I'm going to go way too hard. So my body senses that, and I say, I don't want to do that. I'm going to decelerate. That's going to make it really tough for me to control my speed. Now on the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, if I go really short, I would have to accelerate really fast. So now the little short backswing, kind of a pop stroke, that's going to be a little easier to control your speed compared to too long and decelerating, but it's still not the best. If I over accelerate or I have a little short backswing and I really have to accelerate fast, that gets it tough. Sometimes I'm going to accelerate a little too much, my speed goes too fast. Sometimes I'm going to accelerate not quite enough and my speed's going to go too slow. So here's a cool, again, keeping with the same idea of random practice and variability training. What I recommend that you do is make one putting stroke trying to hit that number and try to go way too far back and see if you can hit right on the number you're talking about. And you'll find it just feels a little awkward when I go way, way far back like that. I have a tough time getting it exactly right. I feel like I get a little decelerating coming through the stroke. Then go on the opposite end of the spectrum. Do the one where you go really short and then you pop through it, and you're gonna feel like, okay, I get some good ones there, but again, tough to really control my speed exactly because I feel like I don't have the touch and feel that I would if I was a little smoother. Once you've done some of those, go back to the middle and then try to find that sweet spot of how long and how far through you come to be able to get your speed very, very consistent. So that's the fastest way to do that. Again, it seems like we should just tell me how far I'm supposed to take it back and how far I'm supposed to take it through, and let's do exactly that. That's good practice. It would help if I told you that, but the fastest way for you to learn that and for it to transfer to the course is actually vary really long, really short, and then find somewhere in the sweet spot there in the middle. That's going to retain the best for you rather than just trying to do the same thing every single time. So again, this mat is great for that, great practice, and that's one of the drills that I would definitely work on, working on your speed. Now, when I'm doing that drill, I do want to kind of try to go from the same color each time. If I start varying up, going from different colors and different backstring lengths, that can get a little bit complicated and I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. I want to keep that where I'm going from the same color. Once I get that down, then I can vary up the colors from there. That's what's called a challenge point. Basically meaning that I want to make whatever drill that I'm doing, I want to be able to have a certain degree of success with it, and I'm going to learn the most from that. So great mat, great training aid, and man, I love the Roll the Rock. I hope you really enjoyed this. Now what you should do from here is get your setup correct. A lot of times I'll find players that are maybe not set up correctly over the top of the ball. Their eyes are way outside the golf ball or way inside the golf ball. They're inconsistent with their setup, and I think it's good to get a great foundation, get your setup looking good, and that's going to make it easier once we get the proper setup to hit these numbers over and over again, or to make the correct length backstroke over and over again. So I have a great bonus video for you, one of the best ones on getting the proper putting setup. It's usually only available to all access members on our website on Top Speed Golf, but I'm going to give it to you here. All you need to do is click the link that pops up, or the iCard that pops up on your screen, or the link down below in the description, and you'll get instant access. Let's go ahead and get started, getting that great setup. We're going to pair it up with our speed control. You're going to be putting great. Let me ask you if this has ever happened to you before. You find yourself over a pretty important putt. Maybe it's only 6 or 7 feet. You've probably made hundreds, if not thousands of these over your career. But now you find yourself over one of these to win a match, to shoot one of your lowest rounds, to save a par on a very important hole. And you try to tell yourself to do all the things you've heard before. You try to tell yourself to be nice and soft with your hands, to keep your head still, to really focus on positive thoughts, on really good things. But you just can't for the life of you. No matter what you visualize, you cannot picture this ball going into the hole. It doesn't seem like it's physically possible for that to happen. You find yourself getting kind of tight or jerky with your hands. The smoother you try to make your hands, the jerkier they get. Then you pull back the trigger, you make this long backswing, you decelerate, and all of a sudden you miss that putt, and it's so frustrating because you know it's so simple, it's so close, you should be able to make these all the time. Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about some of those common myths, how that good instruction, those good tips can actually be hurting your putting, how to get confident over those putts and drain those short to mid-range putts every time and win those points. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's talk about this first misconception with putting. One of these things is this good advice, but can really hurt your short putts. We all know that we want to be